Hello everybody, spiritual teacher and intuitive healer Matthew John here with another video for you. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk today about Mercury retrograde. It's a timely topic because the day before this video dropped, Mercury stationed going retrograde, and you're going to learn all about what that means, what the difference between Mercury station and Mercury retrograde is, why Mercury goes direct, what it means, and most importantly, how to survive Mercury retrograde, and actually even better, how to thrive during Mercury retrograde. So that's why I called this video your Mercury retrograde survival guide. So as a spiritual teacher, one of the most exciting parts for me about Mercury retrograde is the fact that it gets people talking outside of the spiritual communities. You know, most people don't really understand astrology, but most people know about astrology. Most people know what their zodiac sign is, which would be their sun sign. You know, if you go on a first date with someone, you're going to say, oh, what sign are you? I'm this. What sign am I? And you're, exchanging information about your sun signs. So, and also most people know about Mercury retrograde because they've seen it in articles in like Cosmopolitan magazine or Time magazine, or they've seen people talk about it in TV shows or movies. And so it helps astrology become more mainstream. So that part about Mercury retrograde actually gets me kind of excited when it rolls around. So the purpose of this video is not only for my regular subscribers, but also for anyone on YouTube who stumbles across this and wants to learn more about Mercury retrograde and a little bit about astrology in general. So what is Mercury retrograde? So Mercury retrograde is, in astrology, it's a period when charting the skies, it appears that Mercury is traveling backwards, okay? Now, as we relate astrology to astronomy, in astronomy, Mercury retrograde is an optical illusion that occurs where it appears that Mercury is traveling backwards in the sky. Now, the reason that this optical illusion occurs is because the orbits of Mercury and Earth are very different. Mercury has a very quick orbit. It only takes approximately 88 days, while of course the Earth takes 365.25 days. So because of that, there will be periods of time where it does appear from where we're standing here on Earth that Mercury is actually traveling backwards. It's not actually traveling backwards in its orbit. It doesn't actually stop and go the other direction. It's just what it appears to be from here. But all astrology is based on astronomy, right? So when that optical illusion occurs is when we have the Mercury retrograde period from an astrological standpoint. Now, it happens between 3 and 4 times usually each year. This year we've got 3 Mercury retrogrades. The first one was in January and February. The second one officially begins with the Mercury station on May 29th, which if you're watching this on day 1, that it was released would be yesterday. And it officially ends on June 22nd with Mercury stationing going direct. And I'll talk in a moment about what the stations mean. And then we have another one, September 27th, stationing retrograde, to October 17th, stationing direct. And the station means where Mercury appears to stall in the sky. And again, it's an optical illusion, but it'll appear to slow down and then stop and then slowly start to go the opposite direction. Okay. Now, the period where Mercury is slowing down in the sky is called the shadow period. So there's a pre-shadow period, which is the 2 weeks before the station, which we've just ended the pre-shadow period of Mercury. Then there's the post-shadow period, which occurs after Mercury stations and goes back direct, where Mercury is still traveling slower than usual. Now, when any planet in astrology is slowing down or it's still moving slowly and starting to speed up again, it means it's exalted, okay? So the term exalted means that it has more influence than usual on reality. So the way that astrology works is we take a snapshot of where all the planets are in the sky and even asteroids and fixed stars as related to Earth in any moment, and it gives us a general overview of the energies that are present at the moment. And just a reminder, astrology is never a predictive thing. It was never meant to be predictive. What it does is it gives us an overview of the energies, and it can help us to predict possible outcomes. All planets have retrograde periods, and Mercury just happens to be the most well known because it has to do with communication. And we are a society of earthlings that rely on communication, both in-person communication and more each year, technological communication. So let's talk about what to expect and how to survive Mercury retrograde. So during Mercury retrograde, expect things to go awry in communication. Expect the unexpected in communication. Okay, and communication has to do with verbal communication between people, text messaging, emailing, phone calls, electronics. Okay, electronics are all under the realm of Mercury. So we're talking our smartphones, we're talking our computers, our cars, our televisions, anything at all that runs on electronics. Expect the possibility that things could break down during Mercury retrograde. I know for many light workers, you can probably comment below about your electronics breaking down during Mercury retrograde. It certainly happened to me many times. And also just communication between people can be difficult because things will get misunderstood or misread. People will miss emails. People will miss text messages. People will forget appointments. Okay, people will think someone said, okay, yeah, our appointment's Tuesday at 5 o'clock, and for some reason in their mind they thought it was 4 o'clock. So it's really important for those of you who are practitioners, entrepreneurs, verify your appointment times with clients. Okay, I really recommend that. It doesn't hurt to double check, because during the Mercury retrograde period is the most common time, I've seen it in my practice, when people will miss and forget about appointments during Mercury retrograde, or they'll think the appointment was the week after or the day after or a different time. So verify appointment times with others. Verify that emails are received. You know, if you're expecting to hear back from a client or customer about something via email, you know, if you don't hear from them for a few days, double check that they got the email. Could end up in their spam folder or their promotions folder, or they could have just glossed over it somehow, or just missed it when they're scrolling through their phone, or accidentally deleted it or archived it when they're scrolling through their phone. That's the sort of stuff that happens during Mercury retrograde. Be flexible and adaptive during Mercury retrograde as well. And be lenient with people, especially when it comes to communication. Verify, double check what someone means by someone. If you're in a personal interaction with someone, okay, a friend, a partner, a parent, a child, a brother or sister, whatever, and someone says something that you find triggering, double check, did they actually mean what you're thinking and reacting to and freaking out about in your mind? Because a lot of times they didn't, and it was just a miscommunication. This, of course, can happen a lot with text messaging. So make sure that you verify, oh, did you mean this by this? And a lot of times they'll be like, no, I didn't mean that at all. That's the type of thing that'll happen during Mercury retrograde. So don't jump to conclusions in communications in Mercury retrograde. Give people the benefit of the doubt, okay? If people don't get back to you right away during Mercury retrograde, give them that extra time, give them that extra leeway. Okay, so be flexible and adaptive with people. If you're waiting on something to be repaired, if you have your car being repaired by the mechanic, expect delays. Expect delays in anything you're getting repaired. Expect delays in anything that you're trying to get sorted out, okay? Some problem in business, financial matters, some problem with paperwork, whatever. Expect delays and expect miscommunications between people about that. Okay, if possible, avoid signing contracts during Mercury retrograde. Now, of course, if you're in business and there's a huge opportunity and you have to sign it right now, then make sure all the T's and I's are dotted and crossed, so to speak. I said that wrong. All the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. You know what I mean. Make sure everything's very, very clear in any contracts, because what usually happens when people sign business contracts during Mercury retrograde, later down the line, when Mercury is direct, you'll find some sort of problem that wasn't totally made clear when the contract was signed. So really triple, quadruple check everything and make sure everything's really clear. Be much more thorough than usual in contract negotiations about anything during Mercury retrograde. It's best to hold off, if possible, on big purchases, okay? It is a really precarious time to buy a house, to buy a new car, to buy any big ticket item. It could be a huge television, it could be a really expensive new computer. whatever. Be really careful, because anything purchased during Mercury retrograde period, it's much more likely that you'll experience problems with it down the line once Mercury goes direct. The usual thing that happens when people make these big ticket purchases during Mercury retrograde is everything seems okay at first, and then a month or a couple months later, or even a year later, when Mercury's direct, a problem comes up that they didn't anticipate. That's the usual rhetoric of Mercury retrograde: unanticipated problems coming later on from anything that you purchased or signed into contract during Mercury retrograde. So be very careful. I bought a used car back in late 2016, and it was during Mercury retrograde. I knew it was Mercury retrograde, but it was a great deal, and I just wanted to buy it right then and there, and I did, and I still have the car. It still runs. It's not in the best shape. There ended up being a heck of a lot of unanticipated issues, and I even had it checked out by a mechanic before I purchased it, but it ended up having a lot of issues that I did not anticipate. Mercury retrograde. So just be very careful. If possible, if you're looking to buy a home, if you're looking to buy a car, if possible, wait until July. If you can, be patient on things. I know there's times in life where we do need to sign things right away and purchase things right away. And if you're doing so, just ask all the pertinent questions, okay? Make sure, ask about the warranty, ask about everything else. Make sure everything's checked out, okay? Just be very careful. Be much more careful than usual during Mercury retrograde. Be careful with travel plans during Mercury retrograde, okay? It's very common that people traveling during Mercury retrograde have flight cancellations, flight reschedulings, unanticipated problems, with the plane. They gotta, ground the plane, and you gotta wait before they get a new one. Like, very common during Mercury retrograde. If you're going on a car trip during Mercury retrograde, just prepare in your mind for your car to break down, because it's very possible that it will during Mercury retrograde. Of course, it's very possible you can go through Mercury retrograde completely unscathed. I cannot remember a Mercury retrograde that I've been through where I didn't have some sort of electronic issue, something breaking down, some sort of issue with my Wi-Fi or communication or my phone or my car or something. And I think most people, comment below if you have any examples of things going wrong with electronics or car travel, whatever, during Mercury retrograde. So it's just something, Mercury retrograde sounds scary, especially to people who really aren't too familiar with astrology. But it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just something to keep in mind to make sure you're prepared, for anything that could go wrong during Mercury retrograde. Now, the opportunities that Mercury retrograde provides are also there. And the number one opportunity that it provides is it is a chance to refine our communication. So because Mercury is, by the way, the reason, if I didn't make this clear, the reason that Mercury retrograde causes communication issues is because Mercury is the planet of communication. So Mercury rules both sides of communication, great communication and miscommunications, right? And during Mercury retrograde is when the miscommunications are more likely to occur. Now, Mercury retrograde provides several opportunities, okay? It provides an opportunity for us to refine our communication, okay? To refine our communication. So, use this time to speak more clearly, okay? Speak more clearly. I'm constantly trying to remind myself when I speak to speak clearly. I tend to speak too quickly. I'm from New York. It's kind of an East Coast thing, I think. I tend to speak too quickly, and I tend to use a lot, and I try not to. And so refine your communication. Refine your text messaging and email communications. Be extra clear with people. Be extra clear with your intentions on things. Be extra clear with the way you word things, okay? And be an extra good listener during Mercury retrograde. Really intend to absorb what other people are saying. So often we go through life and just charge through with what we want and what we see, and others are speaking to us and we're barely hearing them, okay? Listen to what others have to say. Listen more closely during Mercury retrograde. Listen to everything more closely during Mercury retrograde. Listen to the sounds of the birds more closely. Listen to the sounds of the wind and the weather more closely. Listen to music more closely. Listen to everything more closely during Mercury retrograde, okay? It's the best time of the year to learn, to improve, to refine our communication, okay? It's also a time to revisit the past in some senses. It's very common that people will hear from old friends and ex-partners during Mercury retrograde. So if you hear from an old friend or you feel the desire to reach out to an old friend and connect with someone you haven't connected with in months or years, Mercury retrograde is a very good time because in the energies that are present, it's almost like time kind of rewinds a bit, and we have the opportunity to revisit things from the past during Mercury retrograde. So it's a great time to reconnect with old friends. You may also reconnect with an ex-partner. If an ex-partner reaches out to you or you reach out to an ex-partner and you're feeling like you're trying to create something romantic again, be very careful. Be very, very careful, because it's very common, I've seen it a lot, that people will reconnect during Mercury retrograde, start to have feelings for one another and want to give it another shot. And as soon as Mercury goes back direct, those feelings kind of disappear. Because during the Mercury retrograde period, people are kind of living back in the past a bit. So be very careful. Make sure that if you're thinking about getting back with an ex-partner, make sure that you feel the same after Mercury goes back direct, okay? And if you don't, then that was your indication that it was just Mercury retrograde. But it also may be a time where you can maybe work some things out, get some closure, so to speak, with partners from the past. It's also a good time to address problems or issues in your personal life that have been going on for a long time. So if you, for example, if you've got some sort of financial issue or some sort of paperwork issue that you've been having trouble with for a while, actually Mercury retrograde could be a time where you could get it actually worked out if it's something from the past. Seek others' assistance during Mercury retrograde, okay? Reach out to others for help during Mercury retrograde. Don't try to solve everything by yourself. Everyone's in the same boat with Mercury retrograde. It affects everyone. Now, there is a subset of people who it will affect less, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. But it does affect most people pretty strongly. So reach out to others. Now, especially during this one, because this Mercury retrograde is in Gemini, and Gemini is the home sign of Mercury. So Mercury is in his home sign. Gemini rules communication. Gemini rules the mind, okay? So during this particular Mercury retrograde, it's a great time to communicate with people and to work out things with communication, to reach out for help and network with others during this Mercury retrograde, okay? And especially if it's a problem that has to do with something that's really kind of on the ground, grounded, Capricorn stuff, paperwork, financial issues, mechanical issues, electronic issues. Reach out to someone for their assistance. Don't try to figure it out all on your own. And also, it's a great time during this Mercury retrograde period to refine your thoughts and improve your internal communication. So this would be a great time to watch, for example, if you're interested, my course called Change Your Reality by Changing Your Words, and start to implement that sort of aspect of spirituality, of improving your internal communication and the way that you communicate with the world. So this is a much more mental Mercury retrograde than usual. Observe your communication internally. Observe your thoughts. Remember, anytime you observe your thoughts, you're coming back into your awareness and you're separating from the ego self that you think most of the day is your true self. So observe your thoughts. Journal a lot during Mercury retrograde. Write down all the patterns that you have that are no good and you need to leave in the past. You know, write down the belief patterns, the common manners of speech, and the common thought patterns that you have, and let them go. And we're also in an eclipse season right now. So it's not only Mercury retrograde, but we're in an eclipse season. We're in between the Sagittarius total lunar eclipse and the partial solar eclipse coming up in Gemini. And in this window, the energy is very fluid. It's very unsettled, and it's making the Mercury retrograde even more powerful than usual. So do a lot of journaling and be very patient with yourself and with others during this Mercury retrograde, and be very clear in your communication. Don't make any big life-changing decisions during Mercury retrograde if you can hold off. So not only if you can hold off on signing contracts or buying big things, hold off on making any huge life-changing decisions, if possible, until eclipse season is over and Mercury goes back direct. So let's talk about dates. May 29th, yesterday, if you're watching this on day one, was the Mercury station going retrograde. Okay, the most potent time, so the time when you're most likely to experience these Mercury retrograde issues are the days around the station phases. Okay, so 7 days before, 7 days after, but even more potently, 4 days before, 4 days after. Okay, so right now, if you're watching this on the first day or the first couple days, you're right in the most potent phase of Mercury retrograde. In the middle of Mercury retrograde, so between like kind of June 5th to June 15th, we're in Mercury retrograde, but it's not as potent. Okay, then it starts to get really potent again between like June 16th and June 29th. June 22nd is when Mercury stations to go back direct, but the shadow phase is 2 weeks after that, and the first 5 to 7 days of the shadow phase is still, Mercury is still pretty potent, even though it's going back direct. So if you do have to make a big decision, if you do have to purchase something, if you do have to sign contracts, whatever, the best time would be if you could wait till July. Wait till after July 2nd if possible, or at least until after June 29th. If you can't, then do it right in the middle of Mercury retrograde. So around June 7th. June 7th to 11th, that sort of window. Mercury will be a little less exalted then. Okay, and I promised I'd talk about the group of people who are affected less than others by Mercury retrograde. So if you were born with Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, so when you were born under a Mercury retrograde, and that's true for about 25% of the population, you will be less affected by Mercury retrograde. So take a look at your natal chart. If you don't know how to read your natal chart and you want to know, feel free to email me, okay? We can do a private reading. So I'm not an astrologer per se, but I do incorporate a lot of astrology into my soul plan readings. And so if you book a reading with me, I can definitely take a look at your natal chart. If you want to look up your natal chart on your own, it's pretty simple. It's not the easiest thing to read, but some sites do have good explanations anyways of what the aspects are in text. So you can just go to Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine, Bing, you like to use, and type in find my natal chart, or look up my natal chart, or look up my birth chart, and type in your birth info. You don't need your birth time if you don't have it. The birth time determines the houses, and that's something I can talk about in another video about the houses in astrology. But you don't necessarily need your birth time to see whether Mercury was retrograde or not when you were born. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I hope that this alleviated some concerns about Mercury retrograde. The most important thing is don't be afraid of Mercury retrograde. Just be prepared. Just be prepared for things that possibly go wrong. Oh, and back up your computer files and your phone files. Back up your files, okay? Do not leave those things to chance. Back up your files, okay? And if the check engine light comes on in your car and you're going to go on a trip, check your car out, okay? Just anticipate electronic problems happening. And hopefully they won't. Hopefully you'll get through Mercury retrograde unscathed, or it'll just be a few minor things. And I wish all the best for everyone during this Mercury retrograde. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. I really appreciate it, and it really helps YouTube to send this out to more people, so more people can learn about astrology and all the other things I talk about on my channel, the emotional freedom technique and all that. And be sure to subscribe to the Higher Self channel. Okay, type in Higher Self in the YouTube search bar, and it's a channel. It has about 600,000 subscribers, and every 2 weeks you can find my astrology podcast on there. So I do one for the full moon and the new moon. Okay, so my next one will be for the new moon / solar eclipse in Gemini. Please subscribe to both my channel and to Higher Self. On this channel, I post 1 to 2 videos per month. In the future it will be more, but for this year it'll probably be 1 to 2 a month. I talk about astrology. I do talks on different spiritual topics. I'm planning on doing some teaching and talks about the tarot, and I also do emotional freedom technique or tapping videos on my channel. And I have a live Mastery Empowerment course coming up on June the 12th. It is called Intro to Candle Magic and Moon Magic. So this is going to be really fun. So for those of you who are interested in using candles to do spell work, okay, and I know spell work can sound kind of scary to some. This is all white magic, okay? We're not doing anything that's going to cause bad karma, okay? So this is all white magic. If you want to learn how to do white magic using candles and using the phases of the moon, also planetary hours and the planetary days of the week, okay, this is a great introduction course, and by the end of the course, you'll know exactly what to do if you go to your metaphysical shop or go online and purchase some candles and some oils, and you'll know how to calculate planetary hours and know when to do your spell work. So this is a great introduction course to white magic spell work. It's on June 12th. It's at 2 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Chicago time, 11 a.m. Los Angeles time, 7 p.m. London time. And it also will be available on demand. The link is in the description box below to register. It's just $33. It'll be about 90 minutes to 2 hours. I'll be doing a Q&A as well at the end if anyone wants to ask me about anything. And who knows, maybe I'll do some live tarot readings just for fun. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful Mercury retrograde. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best. Namaste.